So yeah, welcome everyone. I am outdoors at Brighton Bush Hot Springs. I don't have a sunshade. I don't want to be in the sunshade particularly, but I want to see you where we've come together. So I'll manage like this. Great to see you. So let's do a short mindfulness practice together, and then we can come into our discussion about, why the situation with food has been helpful and also how it's been hurtful. But first we'll do a short mindfulness practice together. So please take a comfortable upright seat. And you can close your eyes. And let your attention come into your body right here in the present moment.
Good. You like it?
As you're coming into the present moment, however you've arrived, whatever the morning has been, whatever the afternoon has been, give yourself the invitation that this present moment is a refuge. It's a sanctuary.
Is water back?
And just as if you were to walk into a sanctuary or a place of refuge, you could imagine that there would be an ambiance in there that might be a little bit quieter or a little bit more like sacred. If you were to walk into a church, for example. But let's imagine you're walking into that part of yourself that has a relationship with what is sacred, what is sanctuary, what is refuge. Allow your breathing and your body to kind of sense arriving in that, just as you would if it was maybe a temple or even an outdoor place where sacred activity happens.
Your voice sounds like Opie. You know that? Your voice sounds like Opie. Yeah, have you ever heard that before? Has anyone said that?
And then begin to deepen your breathing so you have a little bit more access to this inner place of sanctuary or refuge is the word I like to use.
Bugs are there.
And then please raise your hands to your heart, one or both. And appreciate this place of sanctuary or refuge that is within you, that you do want to have access to. And you could bow your head to your heart if you like. And then you can open your eyes and lift your gaze as you're ready to. So one reason that I'm talking about that in terms of kind of refuge or a sanctuary is that I have a long string on my sleeve. I can't get rid of it now. It'll have to be a decoration. It's a natural need for us in our human system that we need places of sanctuary or places of refuge. We need a place of solace or a place where we feel like we're in touch with something, maybe more, you could say more divine or more grace-filled. We know that about the human system because so many religions have been created and so many places of worship or so many sort of temples or shrines are created. So if we then consider that sometimes when we're reaching for like food or food behaviors, whether it's binging into numbness or restriction into numbness, we're reaching for something that feels like sanctuary from a storm or sanctuary from pain or refuge from responsibilities, refuge from overwhelm, refuge from a sense of, let's say, burden or demand, a perceived sense that there's just too much on us. So if we think of ourselves as adults, sort of turning to that still, we feel confused about why we're doing it, especially if we have had training in other like stress management practices, or we've had training in how to be sort of more mindful in our workplace, or we've had some kind of training that would help us to somehow not feel so burdened, and it's still not working, we have to follow the root tendril, as I like to call it, the root tendril back into earlier life, where food was first, when we needed something for soothing, for solace, when we needed that experience of like quieting down the mental noise, when we needed a sense that there could be a place of quietude, we turn. Now, how did we do that? Why was food helpful at that time? If we had the sense that there wasn't another resource to go to, food was within reach. And sometimes that was the real impetus, that it was within reach. It was there. Like, I know for one of you, it was on the grocery store shelf because you grew up in a grocery store, right? So it was right there. And it normalized so to reach for food, or parents might even give a child a cookie or a treat or a snack or some kind of a donut, a cookie, that we would be given something when we were distressed emotionally, and it was actually kind of soothing. And it was something that we received from a care provider. So we would have interpreted that as care. We would have even like have emotions. So if we take our root tendril back, we would have had needs. Naturally, we were growing all the time. The growth for children is like, it's exponential. It's happening spontaneously. It's happening in an ongoing way. The needs for the child, the emotions, the discoveries, even the need for delight, not just the need for soothing, but the need for delight, or the need for companionship, the need for mutual discovery, the need for play or tandem experiences of being seen or held or understood. Those were all there. And as well, the need for soothing and comfort and assurance and stability and safety, consistency, routine, rhythm. If those needs couldn't be met, attuned to us, we could find ways to make a rhythm, like taking our rhythm from frenzied down to like a flat line. When we go from a food frenzy, most of us then feel flattened, deflated, subdued. You know, we feel like we've turned off the noise in the mind. For some of us, that noise turns off when we're restricting. And restricting has, they're on the same spectrum. We're still searching for safety and sanctuary and solace. But in restricting, for some people, that's where the noise gets lessened, and others it's from food frenzy, or even throughout the course of a day, the mindless kind of chewing that this and that sort of numbs us out, like the candy dish on the desk in the office, you know, in places of work. Every time they go by, it's like a little titration of the sweets all throughout the day, making something seem more bearable. So we have food as soothing. We have it as refuge or solace. We also have it as rhythm. We can reach for it, and we are in charge of that rhythm. So we think. And we also have it as a way to dull or to numb. But food has another way that it's been helpful. Sometimes food is entertaining. Like it lights up the tongue, a certain flavor, a certain crunch, a certain texture, where we're momentarily, the brain is lighting up with sensation and we're less bored. So sometimes we're using food for entertainment, for novelty, for creativity, and we may get really deeply into it. But underneath that, there could also be this emotional cause for why we're turning to that much food or those sorts of foods. In each case, there's nothing actually inherently wrong with reaching for food for these needs. It only becomes problematic when we're overdoing it, and then it goes from helpful to hurtful. So for example, let's say that the need was for entertainment, novelty, creativity, Maybe in our lives, we aren't really feeling met. Maybe we don't have good intellectual stimulation or spiritual stimulation or emotional connection or vibrancy. And food is intriguing. And we have this huge culture here, particularly in the Pacific Northwest where I live and in Portland. I don't know about in Maine, but this sort of foodie culture, right? I don't know if you have that out on the East Coast just yet, but all these different ways to experience food, and it's exquisite. So sometimes we get into that to the extent that we're so preoccupied, committed to exploring that we don't have to feel emotions. We have this other pursuit for the brain, this other source of intrigue, novelty, and entertainment, and we aren't so much connected to the emotional body. So it can be a source of joy. We can do that pursuit with community. We can have intrigue about where salt comes from and why salt feels good with spice and why people are putting spice in chocolate. We can explore those things. But if we're doing it in the absence of an emotional connection or a body connection, it can become a source of avoiding ourselves. Let's take, so the example of entertainment there, if we were to simplify the food, we could ask ourselves the question, if I were to do this less for entertainment, what would my life feel like? Would there be some emptiness or boredom that I don't know how to feel, that I don't know how to be with? Would I have to encounter something that I'm right now able to avoid because I'm using the entertainment part of food? And again, it's not that we couldn't have an entertaining relationship with food. I'm suggesting that we look to see what's the motivation and what course is it taking us down. In that case, it would be hurtful to our emotional life or our relational or mental life if food was occupying the receptor sites for emotional creativity or emotional adventure, emotional novelty, where we could feel different emotions and the nuances involved in that. If it's giving us less opportunity for the spiritual adventure of life or the even the intellectual or adventure of life, then it's taking up a place. We might feel satisfied for a time, unaware that there's another need not getting met, is where we often don't realize that we're in pain. Because on the surface, it seems fine. And we can even look at our life sometimes and say, well, everything seems fine. Why don't I feel more joyful? I have these nice friends and restaurants and sea salts and different flavors. Everything seems fine. We're even having engaging intellectual conversation, but why don't I feel more satisfied or more joyful or more fulfilled? So that's when we look at the entertainment one, when it's pulling us away from some emotions that we don't know how to be with. When food is being used for us to have soothing and solace and numbing, and we get a little bit more flat, that actually can feel extremely helpful when that happens, because otherwise inside there's like a part of us that is panicked. And that part is like, how are we going to feel these emotions that we don't know how to feel? We don't even know what they are, perhaps, or how to give them names. It can feel so ungrounding, so unsteadying. And so the food feels like the solution. According to the brain, it's really helpful because the limbic brain, it mutes us to ourselves. And it blunts us from getting to learn about our emotional intelligence. It prevents us from doing that. It also starts to blunt our courage in those that we could learn somehow to canoe or to kayak, and we could learn sometimes we're going to be whitewater rafting with some of our emotions. So what can happen is that we miss out on the development of our relationship to those emotions. And if it goes on for quite some time, we can start feeling that we couldn't go back and pick up those skills. We wouldn't know how to start. We wouldn't know where to them from. So in that way, in the short term, it's really helpful, but then in the long term, it can be problematic, as I was saying. Foods that we might binge with has another kind of disadvantageous health effect, right? If it changes our microbiome or our insulin levels or our metabolic strength or health or vibrancy, that has another kind of overall depressive quality that can happen to our life and also to our physical well-being, our vitality. And if we look at when food is used, so not for entertainment or for soothing or solace, but sometimes we're using food to give ourselves a sense of structure in our life or rhythm, or it's the thing we depend upon to kind of punctuate the day, or the restriction is used for that kind of structure or rhythm or the punctuation, like I've made it this far, it's 2 o'clock, or I've made it this far, it's 4 o'clock, or what I get to do now. When it becomes a very sort of structured rhythmic effort, we're probably looking for a structure, a scaffold, a container, right? And to the extent that we use food or the restriction of food for that, we don't get to know how our personal rhythm in life is actually changing. Because in fact, it does, not just for women, but our rhythms in life, they do change, not only seasonally and annually, but in the life cycle with our hormones and such. So we miss out on feeling the natural rhythm of the body in life. And we place ourselves in a kind of, Rainer Marie Rilke called it, a sort of monotonous, robotic, kind of ongoing place where he says we're walking back and forth on one strip of floor in our home, and all these other rooms are left unexplored. He talks about that in one of his passages. We're just going back and forth on this particular strip of floor. He says we might be terrified, so we keep doing the same paces because we know those ones, but we don't know how to go beyond that. And yet there are whole rooms in the house that are unexplored. He goes on to say that. So when we first reached for these behaviors, as you guys know, since we've spoken about it at other times, it was actually really helpful. And then when we start to sense that it's not helpful, we hit a kind of a tipping point or a threshold where we can have the insight, this is not helpful to me. And we can have the terror, I don't know what to do differently. Because we built a whole sort of scaffold around how we were doing it. And it will feel like we have to take our whole life apart, which can feel terrifying. I'd like to recommend that we don't have to take our whole life apart. We start building a new structure from the inside. And the new structure, it kind of usurps the old scaffold. And we find the behaviors that we once needed falling away. They're not as needed. And they're not as effective. Because as you get these new skills, this new scaffold, it's more up to date with who you are today. So the old way won't feel like it can meet your needs. In fact, it'll feel kind of empty, or it's like an empty promise. We think the cupcake is going to help me this time, or the restriction will help me this time, but we start recognizing it's not helping because I keep coming back around to the same place in the cycle. So rather than thinking, oh my gosh, I'm having this insight, it's not working as it is, and I have to take my whole life apart, we could imagine rather building a scaffold from the inside that is going to usurp the other. And our life can then have rhythm, consistency, assurance, but also emotional courage and confidence, novelty, excitement, adventure, but also stability, groundedness, consistency, vitality, all these things, as you've heard me say before. So let me pause there and see what your questions are on the topic. I know some of you put stuff in the chat, which I saw, and I can see some of you are taking notes. What gets stirred in you as I'm talking about this today? It's okay to unmute and just step in, by the way. In fact, I can't really use my right hand to unmute you because I'm holding the sun. This is my beautiful experience of being outdoors, but I can't see you as well if I don't shade my vision. Yeah. What about for you, Lynn?
Well, what you just said, I mean, everything you said, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. But this notion of building the new scaffold on the inside and the old will fall away, it won't be needed, it won't even feel useful. That's a wonderful aspiration. And this notion of it being terrified that I know what I'm doing isn't helpful, but
Yeah.
even though, I mean, on the intellectual level, I mean, you've taught me through Hunger, Hope, and Healing phase 1 and now phase 2, I know what to do. But there's a part of me that says, I don't know what to do. I get overwhelmed, and then I get terrified of like saying farewell to that companion. So
Yeah.
I relate very much to what and it's to what you're saying, and it's just helping me kind of see what's been at play in a new way.
Yeah. Yeah, it is terrifying to say goodbye to that companion, particularly because we developed this relationship at such a young age. I mean, it really does feel like it's been there forever when we've had behaviors for a long time. And so, and the part of us that needed this support at that age couldn't fathom the loss of that support. So if you touch that child part that's like, you're going to let go of my blanket, you're taking my teddy bear,
Mhm.
taking this away, I'm not ready for that. You know, I mean, I remember the struggle that my parents went through to take my brother's teddy bear.
Mhm.
I don't know why they decided it was at that time that they had to do it. The teddy bear was kind of mangled. I mean, it had been there for a long time. But I recall I'm his older brother. I'm his older sister, excuse me. So my younger brother, I can remember the struggle that it was incomprehensible to him that it would be taken away. So that in us, which is still kind of that age and had the need for this at that time, that's the part that's more scared about it being taken away. Like our adult self could sense the pragmatic, the practical, the importance, the reasonable, rational, but our child self will be like, you're saying goodbye to that? You're taking that away? So my recommendation is that we connect with that young and terrified part and feel and hear what she's really afraid of, what will happen.
Yeah, and I think what comes up too is like, is there really going to be a new structure? Is there really, like what, not knowing what is going to take. I mean, I have an understanding of what will take its place, but like a visceral trust that something is going to hold me, versus me just falling.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Into the abyss, right?
Yeah.
Like there's just an abyss, there's nothing. Yeah.
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 Yes, it makes sense that viscerally, as you said, like in the inner body, viscerally, is there a trust that something's going to be there? So as you're building the scaffold from the inside, the new structure from within, it might be helpful to intermittently but regularly say to your younger parts, this is a part of our scaffold. I'm making this house for us. This is a part of our new structure. Look at this here, this water bottle, this lemon, this foam roller. I'm making our new structure. This probiotic, this attending the group call. I'm making our new structure from the inside. Hey, you guys, check this out. I'm making this new structure. As if you were talking to the inner younger parts that need to know something's going to be there. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Completely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think what's interesting is just as you guys were just talking, is realizing that it's about trusting, because the word trust came up, and it's about trusting myself to build that new structure. And it's not going to be built by anybody else, right? It's like you, Sarah Joy, and my friends in this group will provide some of the materials that I can use to build that structure. But it is about making that choice. And I think it is about believing in myself, being able to change and to let go of the old structure at the age of 62 after a lifetime of that companion being there, right? and being so easy to go back to. Always, I think always ready, always there,
Yeah.
saying, take my hand, I can comfort you. Right.
Kind of like a
So-
butler with a towel on its wrist. Like,
Yes.
it's always there at the ready for us to go back to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least that's my experience so far. I mean, maybe once there's a strong new scaffolding.
Right.
And I guess what's coming up for me right now is like not having that real trust in myself to be able to carry it through, and to create the space in my life to make it a priority, to create the space in my life to do those things that will allow the old way of comfort to fall away. So that's kind of what came
Right.
up for me as you guys were talking.
So let's imagine, that's really, really helpful, Kelly. Let's imagine that the butler is holding the towel on the wrist, watching and observing to see when is she ready for me to like look away, lean away. When is she going to be ready for me to step back? And the butler doesn't know. So he or she is still standing there with a towel on their wrist, waiting for you to need that, to fall back on it. But at the same time, you're building something new. You could notify the butler occasionally, like, I think I've got this one. Thank you. I'm going to try this one on my own. Or this evening, I think I've got this one. And in trusting ourselves, one of the things that we could reinforce is that we've actively brought ourselves to a group for support. So it's one of the wise actions that we've already done. In terms of, we do need the hydration, and the body dashboard should be tended to, and good sleep hygiene, understand shame, want to comprehend, of course, and take good care of our physical well-being. But one of the other really important things that we've done in the scaffold is to find a group of like-minded women to connect with. And so sometimes you might even just tell the butler, whatever gender your butler is, whatever your butler looks like, I do have a group now. I think let's give you a holiday today. You can step away. I've got some new support. Now, in Buddhism and in meditation circles, we talk about how scary it can seem, quote unquote, the ego less, or the inner critic less. People are afraid of what happens when that part of them is going to fade or no longer be there. And that's a real fear that's been documented in Asian traditions. Like, we're outgrowing something. And when the hermit crab outgrows its shell, I don't know if you guys know this, but hermit crabs have to line up on the beach together in order to move the too small shell to the larger shell, to the next one and the next one. And they have to do it together because for the time that they're out in the sun, they're exposed. So for the hermit crab to outgrow its shell feels really scary, but it's a natural primal instinct for them to do it. And we want to outgrow the scaffold that's been holding us in. And it will feel scary. So if we notify the butler, keep giving the butler some messages, not just hints, but explicitly saying, I think I've got this one today. We will be strengthening as we're saying goodbye in this way. Does that make sense, Kelly?
Yeah, and that just reminds me of that. I mean, I can see doing it proactively, like actually having that vision rather than, waiting until there's the drive to misuse food and hope that I can catch that gap in between the
Right.
drive and the action. So I what you're saying makes sense to do proactively. As even like part of a morning ritual,
Yeah, because in Hunger, Hope, and Healing, you've heard me say this too. We have, I'm going to see if I can still see the computer. It's like a sweet spot somewhere here. So we have hindsight, present sight, and foresight. So hindsight is, I've already had this experience approaching the fork in the road where food takes over. Present sight is, I'm at the fork in the road.
Mm-hmm.
And foresight is, if I do what I've done before, I'm going to repeat it. I'm going to make it a deeper groove. So just as you're saying right there, Kelly, that's very important to acknowledge, okay, if I can be proactive, I'm going to have better foresight, and I'm being proactive based on my hindsight,
Mhm.
so that my present experience feels more manageable. That makes sense?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah. I can still see you guys, and now you can see the trees that we're nursing to put back in the
Oh
forest. We're growing them to put back around the property where it burned. Yeah. Stevie, how about for you, hon?
Yeah, I was gonna pop in here. So much has been so applicable of what I'm going through right now. I know I posted yesterday, just how it's like when I'm restricting, it's like this place of numbness, like you were saying, and this feeling of comfort, and that's my security blanket of when I don't eat, that feeling that I get, it that numbness kind of silences out the scatterness, the overwhelm, the
Right.
everything that's going on just in general life, and so that's my place of comfort. And when I step out of that realm and try to nourish and try to have more energy, like I said yesterday, I had more energy yesterday than I have in a while, and when I thought that I would be more happy about that, I was actually scared. I was scared because it was unknown. It was something that I haven't felt in a while. And I felt like I needed to extinguish all the energy so that I could get back to the feeling of exhaustion and emptiness and that place of comfort and get
Right.
back my security blanket. And
Mhm.
I was just realizing how deep those grooves are entrained in me. Instead of feeling and real, or just like sitting with the feeling of aliveness and actual energy, and
Mhm.
I just automatically went into that state of like fight, or freeze, and it's like, okay, just keep going. Let's walk around here. Let's not eat. Let's, all the things that I normally do to get back into the mode of comfort came rushing
Yeah.
back in. So it's just showed me how deeply these things are entrained in me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's also hinting at how this might sound kind of weird, but how helpful exhaustion has been, right? That
Yeah.
when you exhaust yourself, there's only so much emotional availability to see or be in relationship with yourself. And when you had some energy come back, maybe if I'm getting this, there was a feeling that there was more to manage. There's
Mhm.
and to manage. So you would need a wider bandwidth, and that can feel very scary. Am I getting some of that okay?
Yeah. Like if I have energy, then I have energy to, yes, like if I have energy, I have energy to do better work, do other things. And it's like, it was overwhelming for me. Pretty much to just add more onto my plate. That's kind of the
Right.
feeling that I got of, I constantly have to be the best. So if I don't have enough energy to do it and my mind is so blank, then it's like somehow sometimes it's like, okay, well then you earned rest because you're so tired. Obviously
Mhm.
your body needs it. But if you have a lot of energy and you can be more awake, then that time that you were able to rest yesterday, you don't get that today because you have energy. And so it's like this weird mind games that start to play when I'm not in that dual space.
It's so interesting to hear you, because when you were first talking, you spoke about yourself as the pronoun I, and then you just changed it. You're talking about yourself with the pronoun you. And it almost gave me this sense. I have a question to ask. ask you if that'd be all right.
Yeah.
I wonder to what extent you might have heard messages from your parents, like how you should keep busy, or you have things to do, or you can't just sit there on the couch, do your chores, or you can't just read a book right now, you got to go do something. I'm just curious where that you pronoun came in a few moments back, what it might be connected to.
Yeah, I definitely got those feelings when I was younger. Even when just if I wanted to rest or just sit down and watch a TV show or something, my parents would always be going and doing something. Like if they got home from work, they would go out and do their yard work, or I don't know, just be busy somehow, so down. And I'm sure there was intrinsic words that were spoken of, well, why don't you go out and do this or do that, which I normally always would because I just wanted to be busy. But if I did feel the need to rest, I would feel ashamed of that. And so I would try to keep busy so that I could be up to speed with everyone else, basically.
But this tells us also, again, so going back to the word rhythm that I was talking about before, it tells us how important it is that we feel as a very young person, that we feel connected to our tribe, to our people, and whatever the rhythm in that tribe is, that we feel like we have to adapt to it or kind of match it or not be too different from it. And so you're describing what you sense as your parents' rhythm, and then your body is trying to adapt to that, even if you might have had also, I know you're a deeply spiritual person, and I can imagine at times in your early life, you would have had the rhythm of an introvert or introspective child, or a child looking for more creativity, or land for you when I say that.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. That I wasn't able to reach into that as spiritual now. I tried
breaking
so
up
much
for
to
you
fit in
guys?
with other people.
Okay. Okay, I got it there, Stevie. You went out for a few moments there, but I think I got it there.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. So I was saying how when I was younger, I definitely felt internally that I was always an introvert. Like I didn't want to be in big crowds. I didn't want to be all these things. But I felt pressured into trying to be like everyone else. So I would try to be in those crowds or doing things that my parents would like to do, or go to the football games, or go do normal kid stuff. But internally, I always felt very uncomfortable and out of place. And so I wasn't able to get in touch with what I am into now as far as spirituality and my internal like knowings. So I almost just blocked them out because I didn't think they were accepted.
Yeah, it's very poignant what you're saying, because it speaks to how adapting to what was there and what you sense was expected, that was a necessary adaptation at the time. That was helpful. You didn't have the support to be more unique or different or attuned to yourself. But then it's hurtful because this deeply spiritual expression of you emerging in your life now is sometimes usurped by the food restriction behaviors. It's sometimes prevented its full expression because being exhausted is easier to keep the other things down, the other emotions down, the other anxieties down. So it was kind of helpful, we have to say, a part of your survival that you could adapt to what seemed to be expected, but at the same time, even that was harmful because it was causing you to sort of blunt parts of yourself. And you didn't, based on what you've told me about your life, you didn't have a place to be a more authentic you. Your sister's rhythm, for example, was more like how the family wanted you guys to be. And you could sense that. So there are ways in which you probably tried to match what her rhythm was because it was easier for your family to accept it that way.
Right. And other people too. It's like
Yeah.
she always had a lot of friends and I always had just like a couple friends, good friends, and I would be jealous of that. So I tried to be more like her, but it just never felt right for me.
Yeah. So part of what happens with recovery is that we start feeling what is right for us, and we get to kind of reclaim that or have some ownership in that and feel like, well, who we are is actually uniquely wonderful. And not only that, it's valid, it's permitted, it's needed for us to be our authentic self is more needed than more inauthentic people on the planet. Mhm.
Exactly.
So it's been helpful, Stevie. You also know the last couple decades it's been a little bit hurtful to keep this going in your life. And you're in a, I sense like a very alive pivot time where your new scaffold is being created on the inside. And even coming today and being more active in your group chats and more active in the other things that you've been participating in, like the yoga class from yesterday as well. I'm sensing the change for you is very positive.
Thank you.
Sorry, the screen's moving. I hope I'm not making you guys seasick, but it's hard to hold up steady for 45 minutes outside with the sun changing in the sky. I want to check and see if there was something for Mary that you wanted to make note of or anything to share. Okay, I saw you writing some things, so all is good. Okay, yeah, yeah. So it's one of those kinds of conversations that I hope as it unfolds that you start percolating on some things that we just opened up a bit, like opening up a seed pod in the garden, and then the seeds go, what's going to grow from that seed pod? I look forward to hearing from your butler, Kelly, and the other characters that we've talked about. How is it going to be to have the new scout from the inside become more and more trustworthy, right? To have that feel more and more like it's your wise self creating a scaffold. It's not another form of like the disordered, mischievous, bullshitting self. It's the wise self making the scaffold, essentially. Does everybody know what I mean by the mischievous, bullshitting self? You understood? Yeah, I have that. I had that part a lot as well. That's why I'm referencing it. Yeah. Okay, let me see if I can show you a little bit more without the sun blocking this completely. So this is the house where I stay when I'm here. Up in those windows are kittens. They can't right now because they don't show up against the screen. And then this is Community Village. So these are buildings over here that are part of the village. The sun is right there, so I don't think you're going to see the garden very well, but this used to be, well, maybe a little bit you can see it. This was trees that were being nursed to be put back in the ground, and the planting party happened a couple months ago. They got put back in, surrounding all over the prop. And of course, we're working with the forest department to have whatever else can come back and be taken care of as well. It's not all just up to Brighton Bush for these hundreds of acres, but we're doing our part anyhow. So, yeah. Okay, well, thank you all for being here. Now the sun is coming where I see a little bit less of you. So I'll sign off and I look forward to seeing you in our next chance to be together. I appreciate your comments. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, take care, everyone. Bye. I have to find my cursor. There we go. Okay, bye, everyone.